Hayward Podworks. 100 shows, one vision.
Our sources explain it all. For more information on upcoming shows or to suggest shows, email brianhayward2026@gmail.com. And now let's get into our show. Hayward Podworks is vision, deep dives into any topic.
Okay, so let's be honest. For the majority of people, the first sound you hear in the morning isn't some, gentle melodic chime.
No, not at all.
It's more like this internal groan, right? The stress, the anxiety just setting in immediately. We hit snooze, we feel rushed, and the day starts with us already behind.
And that feeling, that dread, is exactly what our source material, the Morning Ritual ebook, is all about dismantling.
Yeah.
And look, this isn't about becoming some kind of superhuman who wakes up at 4:30 a.m. to run a marathon.
Right.
The promise here is way more practical. It's about using those first few moments of the day to set a really powerful precedent for everything that follows. One that can increase productivity, boost your energy, and, genuinely make your day better.
Okay, let's really unpack this because we've all heard the advice, but our mission today is to get past the usual self-help talk and pull out a practical, personalized blueprint. We want to show you the exact steps, the psychology behind it, and how to build a routine that actually sticks with your lifestyle.
And we're going to start with the most compelling part, the why, the core benefits. The benefits are pretty substantial, and they kick off with probably the most famous one, productivity.
Okay, productivity.
The central idea the ebook talks about is momentum.
Momentum is a great word, but let's get into the mechanics of that. I mean, what if you're a natural night owl? You feel like your best, most productive work happens in the afternoon. How does the source reconcile that starting with a win idea for someone whose brain isn't really online until, say, 10 a.m.?
That's a great question, and what's fascinating is how the sources frame it. It's not necessarily about tackling your hardest task of the day first thing. It's more about securing a little mini dopamine hit.
A dopamine hit.
Exactly. By just completing a small conscious task. It could be making your bed, drinking a full glass of water, 10 minutes of stretching. You trigger that feeling of completion early on. And that positive reinforcement gives you neurological momentum. It just makes it easier to tackle the next thing and then the next, and you carry that confidence through the rest of the day. It's less about output, more about psychological readiness.
That completely reframes it. It's about wiring your brain for success before the world even starts asking things of you.
Precisely. And that flows right into boosting your energy levels. Most of us feel groggy because we wake up to a demand, right? An alarm, a kid, an email. The ritual helps cut through that inertia. By consciously choosing an activity reading, a quick cold shower, a workout, that repeated intentional action tells your body and your mind that it's time to be alert. You're basically training yourself out of that low energy snooze button state.
And then there's the big emotional payoff. More happiness, less stress. The source material is very direct about this. It says a ritual inherently gets rid of the most stressful parts of the morning.
Right, either by dealing with them the night before, which we'll get into later, or just by creating that buffer of time.
And this is where that self-focus part comes in.
It is. A good morning ritual cuts out the time we usually spend just reacting to things, especially by avoiding devices right away. When you ignore the emails, the social media, the news alerts, you stop your brain from getting bombarded with demands when it's most sensitive. And that builds a real sense of optimism and control.
And there's a really beautiful side effect to that, which is better relationships. If you take that time to address your own needs first, you're not projecting all that morning stress, that feeling of being rushed onto your partner or your family.
That stability is infectious. Yeah. And finally, the routine becomes a sort of template for life. Successful people, and the sources mention everyone from Muhammad Ali to Arianna Huffington, they use the morning to anchor healthy habits. It's the consistency that matters. And the good news is, once you push through those first few days of breaking the snooze habit, the benefits start to show up really fast.
Oh.
Okay, so before anyone gets excited and sets an alarm for 5 a.m., phase 1 is non-negotiable.
And what is that?
Honest observation. And this phase requires almost no change in behavior, which sounds easy, but being truly honest with yourself is the hard part.
So we're keeping our usual, maybe messy routine, but we add one thing, a morning journal. We roll out of bed like always, but we just log the experience. Why is that specific tracking so important? Why can't you just keep a mental note?
Because you need to connect your fleeting emotions to actual hard data. The source is insistent on a physical or digital login notes app, a journal, whatever, because by the afternoon, you forget that subtle stress that kicked off your day. The whole point is to connect how you felt in that moment, your mood, how rushed you were, to your actual productivity and energy levels later in the day. You have to see the cause and effect written down.
And the duration is key here too, right? The sources say to track for about 1 to 2 weeks. I'm guessing a couple of days just isn't enough.
Absolutely not. It's insufficient. You need data for the busy weekdays, the slower weekend mornings, and those unexpected days where everything goes wrong. That gives you a comprehensive picture. 2 days is just an anomaly, not a pattern.
There's another really interesting requirement in this phase, the perception versus reality check. Before you even start tracking, you have to write down what you think your mornings are like. Something like, I think I'm mostly calm but a little rushed.
That's the critical step. After the 2 weeks are up, you compare that initial perception to the cold, hard reality in your journal. You thought you were only a little rushed, but your journal shows you started 6 out of 10 mornings in a full-blown panic.
Wow.
That gap tells you exactly where your self-awareness needs a tune-up.
And the most important rule for this whole assessment phase is go about your morning as you always do. Don't try to be better or more productive while you're observing. It has to be a completely honest look at what's really happening.
Okay, so once that observation is done, and we have that clear, maybe even unflattering view of reality, we can move into phase 2, defining the vision and, importantly, setting realistic expectations.
And this starts by breaking some myths.
It does. And the sources are, as you said earlier, kind of brutal about it. First, a morning routine is not a magic cure. It won't instantly fix your entire life or get rid of bad habits you have elsewhere.
That's a big one.
The second is, it is not easy. We have to get rid of this idea that routines are effortless. They are a daily commitment, and they take real work until they become automatic.
And third, it's not going to stick forever in its original form. Life changes, new jobs, relationships, moves, so the ritual has to be updated later to stay relevant. It's more of a living document.
With those expectations in place, now you define your main objective. What is the single biggest reason you're doing this? Is it to feel less stressed? Is it to have more focus at work? That one objective becomes your guide. If you try to do everything at once, less stress, more productivity, better fitness, the whole thing will just collapse.
So that makes prioritization absolutely critical. How do you keep it manageable? See, my journal shows I'm both stressed and unmotivated. Which one do I tackle first?
The sources say you have to start with a primary driver. If stress is the reason you dread getting out of bed, your first activity needs to be stress-reducing, like breathing exercises, not productivity-focused, like planning your day. You have to keep it simple and focus on the one thing that gives you the biggest return on your time at the beginning.
And now we get to use that journal again for the keep and change reflection.
Yes. You look at it and you note what habits you want to keep. Maybe it's that morning coffee, that's fine. And what you absolutely have to cross out.
Like scrolling on your phone the second you wake up.
Exactly. And by eliminating those bad habits, like that 20 minutes of scrolling, That's where you find the time you need for the new intentional activities.
Then we pick activities that actually match our main objective. The sources list the usual suspects: reading, meditating, working out. But there's a huge warning here. Focus on one new activity at a time. Why is that so rigid?
Because trying to suddenly integrate 3 new habits, let's say meditating, working out, and journaling, all at once is a recipe for feeling totally overwhelmed. It's a massive cognitive load. So the source material is adamant. Start with the single activity that best solves your main objective. Let that become automatic, and only then do you add the next small change. A routine that falls apart the second you have a chaotic morning isn't a sustainable routine.
Right.
So the truly effective approach has to be flexible, which means you need different strategies for your high-paced days and your low-paced days.
And the sources really emphasize that busy mornings are when you need the routine the most. Skipping it when you're hectic is pretty much a guarantee that the rest of your day is going to feel out of control. So what are the top strategies for maximizing very little time?
Preparation is everything. The most effective way to handle a busy morning is to use the night before. You want to eliminate as much decision-making as possible from the morning itself.
And we also have to get a little creative with how we use that time. The idea of double tasking seems really valuable here. You might not have 30 minutes to journal, but you can definitely drink your morning coffee and write down your top 3 priorities for the day at the same time.
For sure. Or use your commute. Listen to an audiobook instead of just talk radio. Practice mindfulness while you're sitting in traffic.
But the most unique tip for those super high-stress mornings is something called the mindful breathing pocket.
Yes. You don't have 10 minutes for a full meditation session, so you just cut out a few seconds 2 or 3 times throughout the morning to just breathe deeply and intentionally.
That sounds simple, but how do you make sure that doesn't just feel like another thing on the to-do list that you're rushing through? Is there a specific technique?
There is. The technique is to mentally name it. Pocket 1. You step away from what you're doing for just 3 conscious breaths. The key is to ground yourself. Maybe name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear before you get back to it. It slows down your internal clock without actually making you late. And of course, the golden rule still applies. No checking your devices.
Okay, now for the slow mornings, weekends, days off. Why are these so important, and how should we use them differently?
Slow mornings are for rejuvenation. They're for addressing all the needs that got pushed aside during the busy week. Often that's mental health, learning, or relationships. If you just keep the same rush routine on a Saturday, you miss that chance for psychological recovery.
So we've got all this extra time. What's the best way to use it?
Well, the sources suggest you might actually consider waking up at your regular time, or maybe even a little earlier, just to really take advantage of it. Watch the sunrise, read a whole chapter of a book. And since there's no rush, this is the perfect time to use your devices for those well-being apps. A longer yoga video or a deep guided meditation, because you have the time to block out all the distracting stuff.
And I really appreciate that the sources give permission for some genuine indulgence here.
Yes, indulgence for the sake of well-being is a good thing. This is the time for self-care. Maybe a nice facial, or treating yourself to a delicious breakfast you wouldn't normally have. Waffles, a single donut. The key is that it's intentional, it's tied to rejuvenation, not just mindless consumption. And it's the ideal time to bring in loved ones. A big family breakfast, a slow brunch with friends.
No routine can succeed if we don't deal with the things that sabotage it, and the biggest obstacle for almost everyone is the smartphone.
Absolutely.
The sources strongly, strongly recommend a serious commitment to ditching devices in the morning.
Yeah, and we really need to understand the harm here. When you check your phone within the first hour of waking up, You trigger what's called decision fatigue almost immediately. Not to mention a totally unnecessary spike in cortisol. Your brain is just so sensitive to stimuli in the morning.
So you're getting bombarded with demands.
Yeah.
Emails, notifications, bad news.
And it sets your brain up for distraction for the entire rest of the day. It makes deep work later on almost impossible.
So if the rule is do not use your device in the first hour you are awake, how do you practically do that when it's also your alarm clock?
You have to use an actual alarm clock. A cheap one is fine. The point is to keep the phone physically out of reach, maybe even in another room. And second, you have to use the built-in time limits on your phone to block those distracting apps, like email and social media, for that first critical hour.
But wait, what if I use my phone for a meditation app or an exercise video? I kind of need it nearby for that. How do you square that with blocking the distractions?
That's the productive exception. But you need strict guardrails. You set the time limits to allow only those productive apps, meditation, fitness, while aggressively blocking everything else that can suck you into that reactive cycle. You're using the device as a tool, not letting it be your master.
Okay, let's talk about the second critical support system, your nighttime routine. It feels like we're discussing mornings, but what you do at night really dictates how the next day will go.
This is all about eliminating friction. It's about decision avoidance. You need to make all the non-essential decisions the night before.
Like what?
Check the weather and lay out your clothes. Plan what you're eating for breakfast and lunch so it's ready to grab. And maybe the most critical one, write down the top 3 to 5 tasks for the next day.
That pre-prep is huge. Spending 10 minutes prepping the coffee machine and packing a bag tonight saves 15 minutes of stress tomorrow. That's a massive win.
Absolutely. Set up the coffee maker, pack lunches, put the gym bag in the car. All of it makes sure that your morning time is saved for your actual ritual, not just scrambling to get out the door.
And finally, consistent sleep. We all hear 8 hours, but the source emphasizes consistency even more than quantity, right?
It does. Go to bed at a decent and, most importantly, consistent hour every single night. That includes weekends. Your body's internal clock relies on that rhythm. When you shift your sleep schedule around all the time, your body just fights you when the alarm goes off. Consistent sleep is probably the single greatest thing you can do for an energetic morning.
So we've observed, we've planned, we've customized, we've set up our support systems, we have a routine, but the journey is not over. The source material is really clear that this routine cannot be static.
That's the maintenance phase. The routine has to be upgraded because your life is going to change and needs to stay relevant to your current goals. A routine you designed when you were single and focused on fitness probably won't work for a new parent whose main goal is building connection.
The recommendation is to evaluate it every year or sooner if there's a big life change. So how should you approach making changes if you feel like the routine isn't working as well anymore? Do you just throw it all out and start over?
No, definitely not. Avoid changing things on a whim. The source advises a minimum commitment. If you want to try a new activity, let's say a different type of journaling, you have to commit to trying it for at least a week. Let your body and mind get used to it before you decide if it stays or goes. Changing things every other day just ruins the whole rhythm.
And we have to talk about flexibility. The whole point of this is to lower stress, so being too rigid seems counterproductive.
It is. Being overly rigid just leads to a massive stress spike. The moment one morning doesn't go to plan, a kid gets sick, a pipe bursts, A routine doesn't need to be perfect every single day. It just needs to be beneficial overall.
Be patient with yourself.
Exactly. If you fail one day, just acknowledge it, move on, and get right back to it the next day.
Because at the end of the day, the hardest part is just the commitment.
Yes. The hard part isn't designing the routine. It's the daily choice to stick with it, especially in those first couple of weeks when you're pushing against that wall of fatigue and old habits. A perfect routine that only exists on paper is completely useless.
So we've walked you through the entire pathway. Start with that honest observation in your journal. Define your realistic goals based on one main objective. Build custom routines for your busy and slow days. And then integrate those critical support systems of nighttime prep and device management.
And just remember that the routine is never really finished. And since the source advises that your morning ritual should evolve as your life does, we want to leave you with a provocative thought to consider.
Okay.
If you commit to evaluating your morning ritual every single year, what is one major life change, a new job, a big move, a new family member that you anticipate in the next 12 months? And how will that challenge the habits you have right now? Think about that planning challenge until our next deep dive.
Hayward Podworks. 100 shows, one vision.
All right, this is Hayward Podworks, and that's today's episode. If this helped you, do me a favor, hit follow, leave a quick rating, and share it with one person who'd get value. Want the extras, links, and new drops? Check the show notes. Until next time, stay sharp, stay consistent, and keep building. Hayward Podworks. We'll talk soon.